I'm a member of the club. I'm the IUCN focal point for the Explorers Club, and I'm a proud member of our Conservation Committee. And I am incredibly excited to have Kartick here. He's absolutely one of my favorite people in the world, and certainly in the conservation space. So before we start, and I'm going to keep this short, before we start, I just want to ask one question. How many of you in the audience have never been to the Explorers Club before? Yay. Great. Well, you should know that we have incredible lectures every Monday night. They're on subjects that you won't hear about anyplace else in New York. They're really wonderful. They're very inexpensive, and there's a tremendous sense of camaraderie at them. We have Oceans Week in the beginning of June, and we have Climate Week in September, sorry. And it's just a great opportunity to meet people who have similar interests that you have. So we hope you'll come and join us for all of these events, as well as our Monday night lectures. Now, to one of my favorite people. In 1995, this is the 30th anniversary, Kartick Satyanarayan, Rayanan, I've been practicing all afternoon, and Gita Seshmina, who could not be here today, unfortunately, founded Wildlife SOS and created the first of many miracles for the animals in India. They started by tackling the horrible dancing bear trade, which was run by 5 or 6 families that for generations had done this, and working with the federal government and other corporations, other corporations, they found alternative employment, and today you find no dancing bears in India. This has earned Kartick the name, it's not the dancing bear of India, the bear man of India. Since then, Kartick in India and Gita have created many more miracles for the animals that they have helped all over India. Among the many awards and accolades they have received, one is for the Conservation in Action Global Conservation Medal by the San Diego Zoo, which gave it to them for their many years of commitment to saving the wildlife and street life of India. And tonight we'll hear much more about that and see a film about the lengths that they and their teams will go to save just one of the many animals that need help in India. Kartick, all yours.
It's great to be here this evening. It is absolutely fabulous, and I am honored and delighted to be here at the legendary Explorers Club in New York City. It's humbling in a way to think that the father of your nation, who built the whole national park system, Teddy Roosevelt, stood here some years ago to speak about conservation. And along with giants like Edmund Hillary, Neil Armstrong, and Jane Goodall. So I am absolutely over the moon that Bonnie, our very dear friend, invited us to come and speak here. And as the slide says, we are celebrating the 30th year of Wildlife SOS right now, this year. And that's 30 years of saving animals in India. And it's hard to believe sometimes that so much time has passed. But, this celebration of 30 years helps me kind of pause and reflect on what's gone by and how far we've come. Wildlife SOS was started in a small garage, like Apple. We had $200, and it took me 3 years to get $200 to register the charity. So that's how far we've come from that point. But I'm going to take you back a few decades to a point when I still had to get my first gray hair. And although I was an animal lover, and I would do anything, I would have done anything absolutely to help animals, I wasn't so sure about starting a conservation charity that would grow to this size, where we'd be doing this for 30 years and longer and making such a huge impact. So I am absolutely over the moon about where we've reached with this. But in 1995, this was a disturbing sight that was everywhere in India. These endangered sloth bears that were being danced on the side of the road so the owners could beg for money. And obviously, these animals were miserable. But like everybody else, I didn't think it was possible to do anything about it. Until one day, I got a call from this woman that everybody in my family knew as both eccentric, a legend, and slightly crazy. And that person was Geeta Seshamani. And Geeta called me and she said, we've got to work together and bring an end to this bear dancing practice. And some of you know Geeta, and if you know her, she's not a person you can refuse. So thus began our dramatic and long journey to bring an end to this practice of dancing bears. But there were tons of naysayers who were like, what? You can't do that. And they were like, the problem was too big. What were their reasons? Yeah. There's too many people who depend on these bears. There's poverty in India. How are you going to tackle it? And it's been there for hundreds of years, this culture. How are you going to fix it in a lifetime? It'll take more than that. And that this will cost millions of dollars and will take decades and decades to fix. So how are you going to fix it? But of course, we said, to hell with these naysayers, we're going to ignore them, and we're going to save all the dancing bears by 2010. That was our goal. So this was something that we started with in 1995, and that's when Geeta and I joined forces and became the co-founders of Wildlife SOS. Now, what exactly did that mean? What would we have to do at that point of time? And we essentially saw three large problems. Problem number one was how many bears were out there, how many bears were dancing, and where on earth were they coming from? And we needed to figure this out. And problem number two was we had no place to keep these bears. If we went and rescued all these bears, I knew I couldn't bring them home and have them come and live with me. It means we were going to have to create a place to house hundreds and hundreds of dancing bears. Our initial survey showed us that there were perhaps in excess of 1,200 bears that were being danced across India. So this place had to have hospital, a place where they would get fed, properly housed, given medical attention. And many of you had the experience of your cat getting on your keyboard when you're working, right? Imagine if it was a bear. Wouldn't be easy. Problem number three was, how on earth do we end the cycle? Meaning, if we took the bears, how do we ensure that new bears are not being poached to replace the ones that we are rescuing and we've already helped? And how do we ensure that we can prevent that? And this was a critical point to the success of our program. Now that's when I realized that there were countless other problems that we were going to face, not just three. but we started following Gita's philosophy. Do you know what it is? It's also a philosophy that Wile E. Coyote follows. It is leap and a net will appear. But I think in this case, I don't think a net appeared over there, but thankfully the universe was very generous to us and gentle with us, and I must say we've had incredible support. Many supporters are sitting here with us, amongst us, and we always had a net that appeared when we left to help these animals. And so what did we learn? We learned from our investigation. It took us a long time to do it. We visited villages, we went undercover, we gathered intelligence. When we found out that bear cubs were being poached from the wild by killing their mothers. And I'm showing you a video of a mother coming out of its cubs. This is the most adorable 10 seconds of video that you'll ever see. And it's taken by our research team using remote cameras that's installed. And that's the mother protecting her 2 cubs on her back. And they are incredibly protective. So imagine the extent that the poachers would go to kill the mother and remove these cubs from these protective dens. So we learned also that their delicate muzzles were pierced using a red-hot iron poker, and a thick rope would be thrust through them. I'm going to spare you any videos, so please don't worry. No horrific videos are going to be shown to you. But when they are just a couple of months old, this piercing happens, and their teeth are all shattered with a metal rod, so they cannot bite. And these animals live in abject pain and fear their entire life. So one of the things we had to do was do some serious anti-poaching work. And for that, we had to go undercover, gather valuable intelligence. So here's a video of a sting operation that we conducted to track down a gang of bear cub poachers. And in this video, I'm going to go into this busy restaurant, because you've got to make it look like it's, la-di-da, just simple and nothing's going on. And I call this guy informer who I'm meeting, number 5. As you can see, this is some time ago. And so we met this guy, and we were looking for a gang leader who was a man. Then we realized it was a woman, and she had a gang of 8 people. And so we did some extensive planning. This is how a typical anti-poaching operation goes. And then I have the unique task of going undercover with these people. So I've got to set up the whole plan, organize the plan with the enforcement agencies, and then I have to disguise myself as a taxi driver over here. So yeah, I generously use some mascara and eye makeup, and sadly it works every single time. Every time I've gone in under disguise, it works. And here I'm taking them in a taxi, and I drop them off in this very seedy area. They go in with hidden cameras in buttons, and they gather the valuable intelligence that we require. So when they go inside at this point, they get this incredible food. But what I love about America is you have Halloween, and I get to buy more costumes when I come here for Halloween. But going back to the bears, their lives were spent at the end of a 4-foot-long rope. That was the extent of their life and their freedom. When the ropes were pulled, the bears danced, primarily because of the pain. They would jump up and down. And the bears were miserable. They were in dire need of help. A lot of people thought this was bear dancing, but it was really miserable animals that we had to put an end to. The bears lived in poverty, but along with the poor family. So it was a challenge. This was the roof these people had. They lived under a tarp. They were nomadic in nature. They were gypsies. And they moved from village to village begging with these bears. And now this picture here represents the hardship that the community faced, and so did the bears. So they would walk 5 miles every day to get a pot of water to drink and cook. It was a hard life, and we had to fix this whole problem in larger than just rescuing the bears. Now this had been repeated for generations, going back hundreds of years. Now you see this young man over here, he danced bears, his father danced bears, and as did his grandfather and his great-grandfather. So it, in fact, went back hundreds of years. So this was a situation that we were up against. And we had to stop and change and reform. Something like this is not going to be easy. We realize it's going to be a huge challenge to reform a tradition that went back hundreds of years. It was a mammoth task, but there was no turning back for us at this point. We decided that if this was going to be the entire lifetime that we were going to invest in solving this problem, we'd do it. So what was our solution? Our solution was that in exchange for the bear, they would surrender the bear to us, and we would make them sign a legal agreement that they would never dance bears again, they would never trade or use bears or exploit bears again. In return for that, we would give these people a new vocation and a chance at a better life. They didn't have drinking water, they had no toilets, their children had no education, and we could fix that at this point. So let me pause a minute on this photo. The photo on the left shows you the surrender process. We have 628 of those. It shows the man's name, his father's name, the gender of the bear, and the date of surrender. And this bear starts a new life of freedom with Wildlife SOS. And the Kalandar man signs the agreement. Here you see him sealing the agreement with his thumbprint because he is illiterate and cannot sign. And we put his photograph in, we've got the documents all signed and sealed, and he will never own or trade or exploit or be cruel to a bear again or abuse a bear again. But his life also starts afresh with his family at this point. And here again, you can see another one where Amin, he surrendered his bear, and you can see the date, his father's name, the gender of the bear, and the date of surrender. And on the left, the photo that you see is the last day that he ever danced bears. And on the right, he became a tuk-tuk driver. We taught him, it's called an auto rickshaw or a tuk-tuk. We got him a license, we taught him how to drive, and he earns a lot more money from this than from bear dancing, about 6 times as much. We trained him and helped him purchase this vehicle. And then the word got out. But parallelly, we also worked with the children. We gave scholarships to about 16,500 children in the community. We helped the women, and we also made sure that they have a future in regular society. We taught the women skills so they could do embroidery, carpet weaving. A lot of our badges and handicrafts are made by these women that we actually sell on our website. And they've become wage earners in the community, so they earn more respect and they have a more powerful position in the community. And we were able to break not just the cycle of wildlife exploitation, but we also stopped things like child marriage because the girls were getting married off at 11 and 12. We were able to crack that. And the word got out about these success stories that not only do you have to surrender your bears, you get a great deal, you get a better way of life, you get an elevated status of a better quality of life, and your children and your women can also become supported through this program. And then there was no turning back. Everybody wanted to surrender the bear to us all at once. So sometimes we felt we bit off more than we can chew, and I think we've been doing that kind of consistently. Now let me show you a photo, and you're not going to believe that this is not photoshopped or AI. And so with all the bears coming in, we had to build out rescue centers like there was no tomorrow. So we built out 4 rescue centers, and this photo is taken at our largest bear rescue center, and this is also the largest bear rescue center for sloth bears in the world. It's 165 acres, and it also, the Agra, the city of Agra where this bear center is also where the famous Taj Mahal monument is. And it's hard to believe this photo isn't photoshopped. And the bear in the middle with his head in the food reminds me of my cousin. So we started bringing in the bears, and the speed at which they started coming in increased to a point where we were rescuing and taking in over 100 bears every year. It was hard to kind of combat and bear with, but we had to take care of their medical needs. So as each bear came in, we had to ensure that the inflamed, pussing, injured muzzles were disinfected, cleaned out. We would have to kind of almost do surgeries to get the needles and the iron bars they would use in there to hold the rope. Get the ropes out. You can see the scarred muzzles over here. And then a lot of them had their teeth quite badly injured, and they had root canal surgeries that we needed to do on each of these bears to address their dental issues. They were in a lot of pain at this time. But once they came to our facilities, we then started helping them become bears, teaching them the bear necessities like climbing trees. And some of them figured out how to climb up and then didn't know how to come down on their own. So we had to teach them that task, send someone up and help them kind of step their way down. But it was such a joy to be able to see that these bears who'd never had a chance to climb and be real bears, we were able to give that back to them, the dignity, the freedom, and the respect they deserved as wild animals. This is Elvis over here. He's kind of trying to figure out how to get back down. We also had to teach them natural foraging behavior, which is what they would have learned from their mothers in the wild. And that was deprived. So we would take these puzzle boxes and put holes in them, put dates and honey and things like that, teach them how to forage. And they would slowly figure it out. Remember, these are animals that were taken away as cubs and abused all their lives. But to be able to see them do this was really worth every minute and every effort that we'd put in. And yeah, I wish I could say that this is kind of how foraging is how they would spend most of their time, climbing, foraging. But mostly, they wanted to get into their hammocks and get up to mischief. They'd tear everything down, and they loved the hammocks we'd make with fire hose, and they loved long siestas in the hammocks. And they deserved it. Ten years later, after countless destroyed hammocks and trees, we'd rescued every single last dancing bear across India, 628 of them. Thank you. And the problem that had plagued India for hundreds of years was finally gone. All bear dancing had ended. This was December 18th, 2009. And this was the day we rescued the last dancing bear. This is Raju. But what we had learned during the first 15 years on this journey was really some very important things about saving India's wildlife. So we had to help individual animals so we could help the species and not just work about the species. We also had to work with the government so we could have lasting change. And local communities had to be part of the solution. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have a sustainable solution moving forward. And anti-poaching was critical. We had lots of informers and investigators on the ground to make that happen. And don't listen to the naysayers. That was really key. So we now believe we had the formula for success to tackle any problem across India. So using that solution that we figured out while we worked with the dancing bears, we began to address other wildlife issues like leopard and human conflict, anti-poaching, wildlife rescue hotlines, and protection of elephants. And I think some of you are here to listen to the issue of the elephants as well. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Asian elephants. There are about 40,000 Asian elephants in the wild. That's it. That is all we have. Of that, 27,000 are found in India. And can you believe just 10 decades ago there were 1 million elephants, but now this is all that's left. So it's important to note that India has done the best job possible of protecting elephants, but they are still an endangered species. Now, there are many, many reasons that this population is failing. Habitat loss and fragmentation of habitats is a major, major issue. And conflict with people. So a fancy word for this is, in the scientific community, is anthropogenic risks. But the thread I'm going to focus on today is the captive elephant trade and the illegal trafficking that goes on. And this is a story that brought me to confront what was going on. So this is Bola, and this is one of the stories that really got me to want to do something seriously about this. And you remember the first slides I showed you of the dancing bears, which broke our hearts and spurred us into action. Around that time is when I got this call at about 2 a.m. in the morning saying I got a call from the police hotline saying there's an elephant that's injured, it's on the street, looks like it's dead, do you want to come and check it out? So I got there, I drove up, and when I arrived, I saw an elephant that looked like it was dead, and I saw a truck that was totaled right next to it. And I walked up right next to the head of the elephant, and I used a flashlight and I looked into the eye. I thought this elephant was gone. But there was a flicker in the eye, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, how can an elephant survive such a huge crash? And so I said, okay. So I spoke to the elephant, and I said, well, I promised him that if he got up, I would give him a life of freedom, a life of compassion, and a life of dignity. And I think that sounded pretty good to him, because this is him today. This is Bola. 15 years later. So we used the police crane, blocked the traffic, blocked off the freeway, lifted him up and brought him. But although Geeta and I didn't know at the time, this became a turning point for Wildlife SOS. We were going to save India's elephants. But we had a lot to learn at this point. And we were back to believing that we had to leap and a net would appear. But, we had a lot of lessons to learn at that point. For instance, let me introduce you to Lakshmi. We call her our little dumpling of an elephant. So when we went out to rescue her in the city of Mumbai, which is the financial capital of India, we were confronted with a huge challenge. How do we get her on the truck? Because she wasn't, being athletic wasn't her thing. She'd been fed on pizzas and burgers and all kinds of sweets at the temples. She was a begging elephant. And she was about 1,800 kilograms. What's that, about 4,000 pounds overweight? So it was a huge challenge. And you'd think we managed to get a crane, lifted her up, plonked her on the truck, and we thought, okay, maybe this is the end of our problems, we get back. And you'd think we were done and we were safe home. But we had other challenges. And in this picture, you see Lakshmi's trunk is next to the window of the driver of the truck. So she would put her trunk in and try to grab the steering wheel. And I still remember, like it was yesterday, the driver called me and he was screeching and screaming hysterically on the phone, saying, this elephant almost toppled my truck. I can't drive this elephant back to you guys. And so I calmed him down and I said, all right, raise your window. He says she would keep kind of pounding on the window, putting her trunk in and blowing into his ear if she couldn't reach her trunk. So that taught us we needed to make some changes. And you've heard of a backseat driver. Some of us are. Imagine if yours was an elephant, right? I do sometimes wish I had a recording of the driver on the phone. But that was 2013, and we decided we had to design a specific vehicle that we would use for rescuing elephants. And thus, we created India's first elephant ambulance. And we used that learning from Lakshmi's rescue to design and build out this ambulance. And the vehicle was equipped with all kinds of reinforcements and features. So elephants like Lakshmi couldn't drive themselves home. It had a hydraulic ramp that would help elephants like her to climb up and get in the ambulance without difficulty. And although we try to plan for everything with the ambulance, there are some things that it just did not accommodate, like enough space for them to nap. So we'd often have to stop on rescues. I mean, this could only happen in India. You'd pull up on the side of the road, unload the elephant and the staff, and you can see the staff sleeping on the side of the road, and the elephant as well. And so this is Ria, the elephant, napping with the staff on her journey to her forever home at our hospital. And she was quite the snorer as well. Sounds like one of my dogs at home. One of the troubling parts about the situation captive elephants are in throughout India is that they're restrained using spiked chains, and sometimes several on one leg. And this is Suraj. And the reason I think they're kept this way is it's a way of intimidating and controlling the elephant using pain and fear. And the expertise did not exist in India to be able to manage elephants in a better way, in a more humane way, with better welfare. And when we found him, he had lived like this for over 42 years, like this, locked up, chained up, standing on concrete floor, damp urine, things like that, shackled like this. So we also sent in a decoy to get some video footage of his behavior. And when you see an elephant or another animal going a little crazy, and you can see it's stereotypic behavior, that is head bobbing, head weaving, and you can see him swinging his head. And can you also see he's missing his left ear? And that was damaged with the bullhook when they injured him to try and control him. And this is Suraj at our facility. When we rescued him, it was a lot of challenge. We had a lot of police enforcement support, but we managed to get him away. But look at him here. No chains. So how did we get Suraj from the way he was, shackled, chained up, using spiked anklets, to this position? And in that place, in the temple that he was in, everybody believed that he had to be shackled and chained in order for people to be safe around him. But how did we bring him to this position? It's a technique called operant conditioning. And to be able to manage elephants, we needed to learn from those who were good at it. And there are many places around the world that use positive reinforcement to help elephants using something called target training and using treats. And this is something all of you probably do with your dogs. And this is our team doing target training using a protected contact wall. And we use delicious treats. And this is Lakshmi giving us her foot. And you see there's a little balloon at the edge of it. And she gets a pedicure and her foot care, all her treatments with this. And we had several people who worked with us from several American zoos who came down and trained our staff on how to do this. And all we're giving her are peanuts and treats and gram and dates, things she likes. Now, this is important to how Wildlife SOS has distinguished itself. We do not use fear and pain when managing elephants. And Lakshmi has reached a point where she enjoys this so much, she'll let us take blood from her. I mean, she will let us do anything. She lays down, lets us check her on either side, and you can see the whole thing, and she can walk away anytime she wants. She's not chained, she has no restraints, and she enjoys it so much that she eagerly waits for a veterinary checkup. And to a point that, once we've checked all her 4 legs, she'll come back and she'll say, no, I want you to check my left leg again. And what about this? And sometimes I can read her mind like, I wish I had more legs to show so I can continue to getting treats. She is spoiled. So many elephants that we get calls about are really, really sick. And some of these elephants, with the right help, can recover. But it is with that desire to not give up on elephants like this. This is Manu that we rescued just 6 weeks ago from India. And we decided with that intention that we will build India's first elephant hospital and get all the diagnostics and the treatment facilities necessary so we could help these animals. Now, when people think of a hospital, this is usually what they have in mind. But actually, this is how I would imagine my perfect vacation. No phones, switch off everything, go to sleep and rest. But this is more like what our hospital is. It's like a large aeroplane hangar. It's about 12,000 square feet with a laboratory and state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment. And the elephant you see outside the hospital is Gajraj when he was rescued. Now, when we got Gajraj, he was over 70 years old. He was very frail, very fragile, and we didn't think he would actually survive that journey. But in the end, we rescued him when we thought he was absolutely done. And he lived for 3 years with us. And that's only because of the care and the quality of care we could give him at our facility at that age. It's never too late, and that's something we've learned over the years. This is a funny video. I love this, and I was looking for a place in this talk to share this with all of you. Now, this is called, I call this the elephant toll booth. So these are wild elephants. They figured out a way, look at how creative they are. They stop these trucks that are taking sugarcane and fodder, and they extort a toll. So she would take a few nibbles, but they're not greedy. Just a few nibbles, and then let the truck pass. Don't you love how smart and ingenious and innovative they are? It's like they've worked out a perfect system. And look at the next truck coming. You can't drive through that, can you? We strive to be clever like them, and I sometimes wish we could set up a toll booth and just collect funds from all vehicles going by and take care of the elephants. And here's the third truck. It's like the driver knows, I'm not going to mess with this elephant. Let her take what she wants. So you might be asking yourself, helping these elephants is great, but how are you solving the problem like you did with dancing bears? Well, I thought you'd never ask. So what we are doing is, throughout India, there are about 2,700 captive elephants, and they're comprised of 4 main categories: temples, forestry, tourism, and begging elephants. Now, begging elephants intersects all these categories, and there are about 270 of these elephants. And it's worth noting that we also had circuses in India, but that's been banned. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about anymore. But just like dancing bears, elephants which are captive also come from the wild. They are poached as calves, and the same is true. They all are taken from the wild, and this is the crush cage, or the procedure that's called pajan, where baby elephants have their spirits broken, they're tied up for days, starved, beaten the hell out of. And I'm not going to show you any more photos or any more videos, but it's just to show you that this is the procedure that's used to tame elephants so people can ride on their backs. And this is the horrific training practice that we're trying to put an end to. So our campaign in India is very bold, and it's to help the most needy of the bunch. And we're going to try and save all of the begging elephants, all 270 of them, by 2030. And we feel that we can target and successfully bring an end to this group of suffering elephants. Now, this is Pari. Just to quickly run you over, who was a typical begging elephant. She was only 20 years old when we rescued her. She had a lifetime of scars, wounds, and broken bones. And you can see the spear that was used to stab her, the open infected wounds on her body, broken bones that healed incorrectly, leaving her crippled and handicapped because they were not treated. And their negligence is the biggest problem with these elephants. And she had sharp metal pieces, glass, and other foreign bodies embedded deep inside her foot pads. Imagine walking on that all your life. She was malnourished, debilitated, and blind. And she was still used for begging on the streets. And most of all, she was starved for companionship and kindness. And that's something that we had to tackle. And again, when we took on such a bold step of helping these elephants, where have we heard this before? The naysayers came back again saying, you can't do it. And what were their reasons? Problem is too big, it's a jumbo-sized problem. Yes. Poverty, culture, it's been there in India for too long. How are you going to deal with it? And of course, it's expensive. Yes, looking after elephants is phenomenally more expensive than looking after bears. And it will take decades to fix. Yes, but what's the point of a lifetime if you can't put it to good use, right? So our bold plan here was to save these animals. And so we laid the groundwork to help these elephants. And this is our plan. We plan to use outreach, training, rescue, prevention, and education. And I'm going to walk you through the details of some of these. So outreach is providing medical care to the elephants that are currently on the streets begging. And we believe that, it is absolutely deserving for these elephants to get some reprieve while they are still out there, while we are still working on trying to rescue them. They don't need to suffer while we are still trying to rescue them. So we've launched this mobile clinic. It's India's first elephant mobile clinic. And our goal is to help at least 100 elephants each year. And the official name for this is Hati Seva. And in Hindi, it means in service to elephants. And outreach. Now, part of the inspiration for this outreach came from a promise that I made to this elephant called Moti. Some of you who've been following us might know of this elephant called Moti, who's in this picture here. He'd collapsed. His problem was an issue with the footpad, which was neglected. The owner was too terrified because it was an illegal possession. He could have easily treated the elephant, but he did not. And left untreated, it cascaded into a fatal problem for Moti. And here you can see the situation that Moti was in. But even when we called in the army, we called in the military, and they came in with their engineers. We had a whole platoon of engineers. They helped us build this whole structure, used pulleys, and lift him up. But it still was not enough to help him recover. And because when we were called in, it was already too late. So our pledge to Moti was to bring care to all captive and begging elephants as a welfare and a health initiative. It was absolutely important to bring them that support. And training. So we bring in skilled veterinarians from across the world to teach a whole new generation of Indian vets that welfare is healthcare. And this is one of the workshops that we conduct in the field where we teach them about what to look for in an elephant and how you can treat them. And we just recently ran a workshop. This is the first ever workshop of its kind. It was acupuncture for elephants. And here the vets are practicing on a plush toy of an elephant, but they also have to practice on their hands before that. And it really works. It has incredible effects. So, and rescue, of course. We need to get these elephants to a safe place. And we've been building out 100 acres to expand our current facility. And this is Manu, the elephant that we rescued 6 weeks ago. Like Moti, he'd collapsed. And we didn't know if he would even be able to stand to make that 2-day journey to our facility. But he did, and this is him today. it is absolutely miraculous to see how these animals seem to know when there is a chance at a better life, and when they know that there's people they can trust. Look at him being comfortable in his new surroundings. Now, our field investigators and anti-poaching networks in the field make sure that elephants that are rescued off the street are not replaced with new ones. And it's important that we prevent more elephants from ending up on the street. And we do this by supporting law enforcement and anti-poaching programs. Now, this means that more elephants can live in the wild with their families, like this image that you see, where they were born. Now, we're also doing a lot of education work, and we're campaigning with our Refuse to Ride Elephants message. And we have a website called refusetoride.org, which is an empowerment website that tourists from any part of the world can visit, see, learn about what these elephants go through when they ask to ride an elephant. And it's absolutely horrific, because we've seen vertebral columns getting fractured and backbones damaged, and these elephants suffer that pain all through their lives. And less demand for elephants to be ridden means less demand for poaching, less demand for animals to be domesticated, brutalized, and used for captivity. Now, we don't want you guys to be like these people. I think they look rather impressed with themselves, but they're making an absolute fools of themselves riding an elephant in Jaipur. But it is this that causes the problem that elephants have on their backs. And these kids are really clever. We do a lot of school programs to not encourage children to ride these elephants, and that message goes home with these kids to their families. Now, this is how we plan for the future and another 30 years of helping India's wildlife. Now, 30 years ago, when I was starting out, I couldn't imagine being here today. And 20 years ago, when I came to Salt Lake City, that was the first city I came to the US. And I didn't realize all of the friends I would make, not just in Salt Lake City, but in New York and Connecticut and Philadelphia and across the US. I never imagined I'd be here with all of you, with so many friends out here supporting us. And I couldn't really contemplate what all was possible. But on that note, I'm going to ask if all of you are ready to watch a movie about Bani, the baby elephant's journey. And this baby elephant, Bani, has achieved what most thought was completely impossible. We rescued her from a train accident. She was paralyzed. She was down. Her mother was killed instantaneously. So are you all ready for that? So let's play the new film about baby Bani. But before that, I'd like to make a big thank you to our friends at EcoFlix who put this film together. So this film was written, directed, and produced by award-winning filmmaker and an Explorers Club member, Peter Von Puttkammer. Produced by David Castleman, and narration is by Tim Daly. And if you're not familiar with EcoFlix, they're a video streaming service, kind of like Netflix, but they're family-friendly, wildlife and conservation supportive content, and they're a non-profit, just like Wildlife SOS. And 100% of annual subscriptions that people pay comes to the non-profit that people choose. So you can learn more about it at Netflix. But without further ado, let's move on to the movie of Bani.